Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have a very special guest with us today, Jason Schechterle. Jason is a highly rated motivational keynote speaker. I believe that Jason is a shining example of the extraordinary power of the human spirit, because as you're going to learn about today, he has overcome unimaginable adversity, and he is one of the most inspirational people that I know. And Jason, it is such a delight and an honor to have you here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate the time.
So I'd love to kind of get started here today with you sharing a little bit about your story, and what's most important for our audience or listeners to learn from your experience.
So my story begins right here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I still live. Been here my whole life. People look at me like I'm crazy. I apparently know there's no natives of Arizona anymore at my age, but had an incredible childhood, great upbringing, and I was always called toward service. And graduated high school. I was pretty good at golf. Got a college scholarship. Tried that for a little while, and I just realized, there was life afterwards that I wanted to go ahead and uh, start now. So I joined the military to get a little structure and discipline, go see the world, serve the country, and knowing that when I got back, what I really wanted to do was to be a Phoenix police officer. And so I did 4 years in the military, came back. And of course, everybody who's listening knows life changes on you very, very quickly for a variety of reasons. I got married young, had a couple of kids young, and I ended up with a really good job, really good, what I thought would be my forever career. And that was in the uh, with Arizona Public Service, working on at the nuclear plant, working on power lines, and just an incredible job. And then when I was 26 years old, because time goes by very fast, I I was moved by the death of a police officer in Phoenix named Mark Atkinson. And I mean, that happens not not on a regular basis. It's a dangerous job, but for what police officers see and do every day, it doesn't actually happen, that often. But for some reason, Mark's critical incident was I hate to call it an aha moment, but it changed my life. And I just knew right then and there, that's what you're meant to be doing. That it's a calling. It's one of the handful of careers that is a calling. And so I went and applied, and I got the job, and it was everything and more than I hoped it would be. Just I can't even explain when you do that job with the right honor and humility behind the badge. It's just truly the most rewarding career for me. I could not wait to go to work every day. And just 14 months into my career, I was on duty March 26, 2001. I was responding to an emergency call about 11:30 at night in basically downtown Phoenix, 20th Street and Thomas, the area where Phoenix Children's Hospital, Arizona Heart Institute, very busy part of the valley. And my car was struck from behind by a taxicab, a gentleman having an epileptic seizure, doing over 100 miles an hour when he ran into me. And that started the next life change, the next chapter. You never know when you're going to close one chapter and have to start writing the next one. And that was the moment. So, there's so many details and crazy miracles, twists of fate, timing that went into the events that took place after the impact. But thankfully, I was knocked unconscious, so I didn't have to experience the fear, the pain, the chaos, the taking in those deep breaths of all that hot air and smoke, which certainly would have ended my life very quickly. I was propelled almost 300 feet through the intersection, came to rest right in front of a fire truck, which, again, however, whatever you believe in, whatever you choose to view that, it's everything you want it to be. Miracle, gift of God, crazy twist of fate. But the moment I needed a fire truck most, and it was right there. And so they were able to uh, just drive maybe 50 feet and go to work. But something that I want to remind people, I'm just sitting here going down the list of events, the sequence of events, but these are also human beings too. Doesn't really matter that they're called firefighters, doesn't matter that they had a uniform on. These are husbands, daughters, wives, sisters, grandpas, and we're dealing with human emotions for all of us when we're thrust into a situation like this, and it greatly changed their lives as well. So they got me out of the car very quickly in about 90 seconds, got me off to the best burn center in the United States at Maricopa County Hospital, which is now called Valleywise. Got a brand new hospital I'm very excited about, and started the long, long path of recovery that in many ways still continues 22 years later.
Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate that you shared your, of course, perspective of having lived through that. And also that you shifted the lens to those that were on the receiving, observing end of that. And that were very conscious of what was going on and the trauma for them that, they must have experienced in seeing somebody, suffer. And what do you think is the gift in all of the events between then and now, and even that, as you said, continued today? What if there is a purpose? What do you think that might be?
Finding purpose is, when I do a workshop on resilience, and it's number 2 or number 3 in how to be resilient, because resilience is like a muscle. You aren't just born with it. It doesn't show up in a Christmas package. I mean, if you want to build your muscle, you go to the gym. You want to feel better, you eat healthier. Resilience only comes by going through these difficult times, and finding purpose is an absolute must, key ingredient. But starting that night, that's kind of what helped me find purpose. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan,
I haven't.
but the 3-hour movie, incredible special effects, Steven Spielberg, award winning, all these things that we can get lost in. But if we key in on one of the most incredible things, Matt Damon's character, when he had aged and he was at the gravesite of one of the people that had saved him, he just simply asked, have I lived a good life? Have I honored you? And right from I spent 2.5 months in a coma, and then I spent a lot of dark days. And when I say dark days, true blindness, so actual darkness, but then dark days emotionally and mentally. So it took me a little while to recognize, what, these people did not have to do what they did. And fight or flight syndrome is real within all of us. We can only hope that when we're put in those situations, we will react and will respond in a way that we can be proud of ourselves, make somebody else proud. Because the entire goal of life for me is very simple. Leave the day better than you found it. Leave the world better than you found it. That's all you got to do, and you can never be a failure. Well, these individuals did that. They left me, my family, my peers, and in many ways themselves. And so I just always felt a purpose that I needed to honor their efforts, their sacrifice, and then what they have to go through for the rest of their life as they fall back into those memories, or they hear or see something that triggers that night and that moment. Things that I didn't experience. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. I didn't feel it. Nothing. They did. So my purpose in a lot of ways has been to honor them, and I'm very proud to be part of the legacy that they will eventually leave behind.
And it sounds like, in your perception here, that you've contributed to their resilience, right? To them building that muscle, because, right, if they had not experienced that, they may not have received certain gifts for themselves, maybe a belief in themselves in being able to respond to things, and maybe learnings for themselves about what is important, as I've shared with you pre-call about how you've helped me to remember what's most important in my life on a daily basis. And so, it's a very interesting world that we live in, and the karma that goes on. And so would you be willing to take us, if it's comfortable enough for you, because I'm curious, what was going on in your mind and in your heart in that moment that you became conscious? What did you see? What did you feel? What happened? And I know you said you were blind at first, but what did you perceive?
Well, I was blind, but 2.5 months in a coma, which was the blink of an eye for me, just due to the medication. It is very difficult to get my mind wrapped around what was going on and what I was being told. Yeah, I just remember feeling I was lethargic, I was tired, I was helpless, even though I didn't recognize it as helplessness. I was in a hospital bed, and then it went into, man, I can't go back to work, and the amount of tears I shed over what are my children. I had 2 children at the time. What are my children going to think of me? Why in the hell is my wife still here with me? Why didn't she go on? We were so young. We'd only been married for 4 years. And what have they seen for the past 2.5 months while I was asleep? What have they been going through? How am I going to get through this? How am I going to live with blindness? It was so claustrophobic and terrifying. I mean, I had so many things constantly just hammering away at me. As soon as I'd forget or move on from one thought after a couple minutes, it would be on to the next one. And there wasn't a whole lot of optimism at the time because I wasn't feeling it. And of course, I wasn't being told anything good. I mean, people were just shocked that I was alive. I wasn't being told all the things that I was able to come to realize as time went by. So again, I had to find purpose. I had to find something. And so after several weeks, when the tears finally dried up, when acceptance, which is the number one ingredient in resilience, the absolute number one, until you can accept the facts, you are stuck and will never ever be able to take a step forward. Once I was able to accept the facts, and the facts are very simple. I was burned very badly. I am disfigured. I am injured. I cannot go back to work. And I am currently in a hospital bed. That's just a plain and simple fact of life at the time. But once I was able to get to that, then it was finding a purpose. And for me, life's all about choices. And I had two wonderful realizations that I'm just full of gratitude. You'll hear me say that word all the time. But I'm very grateful for the two things that really propelled me onto the path that I'm still currently on, which was, number one, that gentleman having the epileptic seizure, he had to hit somebody. And I'm not ever going to wish that it would have been somebody else. I'm not going to wish that it was a woman with her kids or somebody's grandparents. And I chose to be a cop. I chose to answer up for that call. I made choices to leave college, to join the military, to not make a career out of the military. I made choices over more than a decade. That's what got me into that fire. It wasn't because some guy ran into me on some tragic moment in time. So when I started to recognize that it's not about self-blame, it's not about anything other than let's just be accountable for what happens in our lives. Because for the most part, we are all exactly where we've chosen to be. And that's a very important thing. And that's what really got me moving forward.
And this is why I'm really grateful that you are here, because, we speak of resilience and we speak of acceptance and these concepts. Mm-hmm. And, those of us that have not experienced something similar to the enormity that you have experienced, may not be able to really access at a body level what acceptance of something like that would require, what that would be like, if that makes sense, right? Because there's more to accept. And I agree with you 100% that in order to move forward, there has to be an acceptance, which means a grief of our old self, our old identity, if you will, right? Our job, our body, right? Many of those things. And that's a really difficult thing to let go of when it's been everything that we have considered to be real, to be us. And I appreciate what you've shared. And what was coming through my mind is I wonder, what about for those people that are listening and saying, okay, this was something that is unimaginable. And, there's this thing that happened to me, but the person who did that to me was not having an epileptic seizure and couldn't control themselves. But let's say it was a drunk driver that chose to drink, or if it was somebody that did this thing to me, to hurt me, how and of course, I don't believe that, that people do things because they are evil. I believe that people do things out of certain beliefs and certain, traumas that they've experienced in their life that causes them to behave in the way that they do, which is not okay. But I also believe that, it's very difficult or it can be very difficult to accept something that we believe somebody did on purpose. Yeah. How do they handle that?
Well, first of all, and I want to say this with as much humility as possible. I recognize the fact that I did not have to go through that. I wasn't targeted in any way. The guy wasn't targeting a police officer. He certainly wasn't targeting Jason. He had made a lot of very bad decisions over a long period of time that led him to that situation. So I didn't harbor, or I chose not to harbor anger. And I've read my police report. It's 1,000 pages. And every page says victim, Jason Schechterle, victim, Jason Schechterle. So the only thing that I can say to people on that regard, and again, I did not go through that part of it. When I talk to police officers, I explain to them, I've never had a gun pointed at me and somebody say, you're not going home tonight. I wasn't sexually assaulted. I wasn't the victim of a drunk driver who, made some really bad choices and ran a red light or whatever. So I understand that that's a little bit different or a lot different than my situation. However, when it comes to being resilient, when it comes to your mindset, the most core strength that you have to understand is nothing will hold you back more than seeing yourself as a victim or blaming somebody else. And being a victim actually is a choice. Because for all the people out there who say, why me, poor me, give up, severe depression, all the way up to suicide, all this stuff. And I'm not going to disrespect or talk bad about anybody else, how they choose to live their life and deal with things. But for as many people that I've seen who cannot accept and move on from something, I have met just as many people who have said, I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim because somebody else says I am. I'm not a victim because society says I am or a police report says I am. And you will only be held back by those two things. So you cannot blame other people and you cannot see yourself as a victim. And that is a choice. And if you can look in the mirror and even if you're cussing at me right now, going, yeah, it's easy for you to say, look at you, you have a great life. Well, I'm sorry, but your mindset is everything. And those are the two central, I mean, that's like the sun that everything else revolves around. You cannot be a victim and you cannot blame other people. That's all there is to it.
I believe you. And hearing it from somebody who's experienced that transition between total darkness, not having hope, not being told of something that could, spark some hope. Yes. From as dark a place as one could be in to this place where you're saying, you know what? I own that the combination of all my choices, right? The conscious and the unconscious ones led me into that intersection to be there at that moment, and declaring yourself a non-victim, yes, an empowered individual, yes, that is more inspirational than anything I can imagine. And so for those people that are there now in their version of their darkest place or a dark place, share with them, how did you do it? What helped you that you can share that can help them to do that?
Well, by nature, we want a quick fix. We want it right now. I want to be better. I want to feel better. I want to get better. I want to move on. I mean, whatever is going through your mind. But we have a life to live. No matter how old we are, how young we are, we have a life to live. And you have to be patient in your grief. You have to be patient in your struggle. And patience, again, is not something any of us are very good at. But the way to be patient is to collect the small wins, collect the small victories and honor those and let the momentum build off of those. When I was blind, and again, for all that I've gone through, by far the worst part of this was that claustrophobic, terrifying feeling. However, I needed that blindness so that I could ask questions and mentally prepare myself for what I was going to see if and when I ever saw it again. So I looked at that as a small win and not that. I don't ever want to go back to it. I'll be honest, I don't want to go blind again, but that was in some way a small victory. Like, I don't just want my eyesight back right now. I don't just want to go back to work. It took me 18 months to get back to work. And that was the one thing. A lot of people believed that I would get out of the hospital. A lot of people believed I would go home. A lot of people believed I would gain my weight back, learn how to eat real food. A lot of people believed I could somehow still be a father to my kids. Didn't know what it looked like. Nobody believed I would go back to work except me. And 18 months later, I got into a truck by myself and drove back to work. But even though when I was in the hospital and I was crying and thinking, oh my God, I've lost the job I love so much. I just want to go to work tomorrow. I don't want to be in this hospital. I want to go to work tomorrow. It took me 18 months. But the only reason I got to work that day was because of all those small victories that I collected along the way, all the wins that I collected. And that's how you become patient, because A lot of people think patience is, well, I have to sit here and wait. No, 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 no. You just can't leap far ahead. Like, again, we all want to, and I respect that. You take the small wins, and that's what keeps you patient. And then all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you're like, well, I did it. I did it. I don't even know how I did it, but I did it. And it's man. And then boom, that starts a whole nother uh, set of momentum. That's a whole nother rocket boost that just takes off.
Yeah. I love the concept of momentum here and the fact that it is small wins. And that requires us to pause, in wherever we are along that journey and that transition, and acknowledge the intention that we have, the belief that we have, or the intention to believe if we don't yet believe in what's possible for us, but we want to, right? We're facing the right direction, so to speak. Yes.
Right.
To acknowledge the effort, right? Sometimes the results are not there yet. To continuously acknowledge our efforts, to be grateful for what we do have. Yes.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge our feelings, right? That we are grieving, that there is an unimaginable loss, that, right? And I think that for people who are going through that transition, in that place of despair, if they are there, or maybe it's a place of anger or denial or shock if something has happened, wherever they are, to just pause and be with how they're feeling. And I think that's a big part of that acceptance, because I think that the acceptance of what has happened, that you said, is absolutely critical. It's step one to overcoming anything, right? It starts from within, right? It's an acceptance of how I feel in the moment, because unless I can acknowledge my sadness, my anger, my terror, then I'm not really being with all the parts of myself, and I may be missing some lessons that are there for me to receive.
100%. I so love what you said about you have to meet yourself where you are. And it really is okay to not be okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be in denial. We're going to feel anxiety and fear, and we're going to shed tears, and then we're going to feel joy and love and motivation, and we get frustrated because those things are fleeting, but we don't recognize, well, so are the other things. And I, as I've been a public speaker now going on about 13 years, and just constantly people want to come up and tell me, oh, Jason, after hearing your story, after seeing you, my problems are nothing. And I'm just like, either you're not listening or I suck as a public speaker. And I don't know which. You can't do that to yourself. Adversity is adversity. And your life is your life. You don't get to be me. You don't get to live my life. And I don't get to live yours. It's great to have respect and compassion for other people. If I see somebody in a wheelchair, immediately I have respect and compassion for them. Immediately I'm thinking, wow, I can't imagine. And with that comes gratitude. I have my legs. I can walk. But at the end of that meeting with that person, I go back to living my life. I go back to seeing my appearance in the mirror. I go back to my deformed hands and what I'm able to do with them. I go back to the limited eyesight that I do have. And yes, I'm grateful that I'm not in the wheelchair, but because I saw one person who was, doesn't take away the adversity that I'm going through. You have to meet yourself where you are. And there's no such thing, believe it or not, but I promise this is true. There's no such thing as big or small. And if comparison is the thief of joy, somebody has a bigger house, somebody has more money, all that stuff, right? It's 10 times that on the side of adversity. If you compare your adversity to somebody else's, you might as well just grab yourself by the back of the collar and hold yourself in place. You might as well chain that dog up and not feed it, because all that's going to do is let it grow and get meaner and stronger and come after you harder. Deal with what you're going through, because adversity has a mind of its own, and it's watching us, and it's like, oh, you got through that? Wow, I thought I got you pretty good. You know what? I'll just come at you a little harder next time. But we're building our resilience muscle. We're getting stronger. We're going through these things. And one of my favorite quotes ever is the movie Tombstone. Just one of the greatest movies ever, probably the most quotable movie ever. And Val Kilmer's character, Doc Holliday, might be the greatest role ever played. However, my favorite quote was from Kurt Russell toward the beginning of the movie, and he was woofing up on Billy Bob Thornton. And then he just looked at him. Matter of fact, he said, "Are you going to do something or just stand there and bleed?" And I love that mindset, because what I think about when adversity, and listen, what you're looking at, what you're hearing, this was 22 years ago. This is not my adversity. I got 12 other things I'm dealing with now that I'm in my 50s, now that my kids are grown, now that I've been married 28 years. That I got all kinds of other things. But every time I go through something, that's what I will try to remind myself. You going to do something or just stand here and bleed? No, you know what? I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something about this. You picked the wrong person. And it's just a great mindset. It's a great attitude. It's a great feeling to empower yourself, right? Like, people always say the word selfish like it's a bad thing. And it is a bad thing in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, it's a great thing. I'm going to be selfish and be like, I got this. You messed with the wrong person. It's awesome.
It is awesome when we have that mindset, when we can see the gift in the adversity and realize this is an opportunity for me to get stronger, for me to get more resources, take better care of myself, right? Evolve, at a higher level. And I think that it is the day-to-day, moment by moment choices, so adversity, at its simplest is I feel an emotion that doesn't feel good, right? Like that happened to me this morning. I woke up this morning with fear about something, and not something major, but fear about something that's coming up. And it was that thing, right? Am I going to just, in that case, lie there because I was lying in bed, or, bleed, so to speak, and suffer, or am I going to do something about it? And I chose to do something about it, to get coherent, to release that fear. And I got a learning, that there's nothing to fear. And, I've got a few extra days to do this thing that I was worried about not, being prepared enough for, or whatever. But I wasn't able to get the learning until I chose to pause and meet myself where I'm at, and feel the feeling and accept the feeling, and really receive it. And then I was able to shift my thinking, my perception, and feel better. Right. And I think that that's what resilience is really about, as you said. And so what do you think is, really important for people to understand about beliefs? Because you said very clearly that, when people did not yet believe that you could go back to work, you held that vision, you believed. How important is that?
Well, I think it's important on a lot of fronts. Number one, it's important to have goals. It's important to strive for something. It's important to not simply accept what somebody else says you're capable of. You might be unfamiliar with something. Like for me, it was at the time, it was my burn injuries. It was laying in a hospital bed with no date of leaving. It was not going back to work. It was just how to relearn life and life before, for how much I missed it. Well, now I have life after, and I really don't have, well, I do have a choice, but I'm going to choose to still live it. So I think that your belief has to be that you can accomplish something. And again, it could be really small or it could be really big. It doesn't matter. But you got to have something to believe in, starting with yourself. I saw a great video yesterday and I loved it. A woman asked, she said, if I asked you to sit down right now and write down all the things in this world that you love, all the people, all the things that you love, it would probably take you quite a while. It would take you a lot of thought. How long would it take you to say myself? How long would it take you to say, I love myself? And I heard that. And listen, I have been going through this for a long time. I think I'm a pretty good motivational speaker. And I almost dropped my phone. I'm like, that is, she nailed it. I wouldn't have done that. I guarantee and I do love myself, wouldn't have come to mind. So we got to love ourselves. We got to believe in ourselves that we can do this, because there's a big difference between being unfamiliar with something and being, it doesn't mean you're incapable. Like whatever you woke up with this morning, you have anxiety and you have fear. Some of it's probably about the unknown. Some of it is probably being created in your mind. And you're going to look back in 3 years and be like, okay, 86% of that was made up in my own mind and it never happened. But just because you're unfamiliar with something doesn't mean you're incapable. You are capable, and you got to believe that.
Yeah, thank you. And oh my goodness, that story of what you heard yesterday touched my heart too. Because I'm not sure where I would, have put that on my own list. And I
Yeah.
think that means, loving ourselves is loving all the parts in ourselves, including the parts that are scared, including the parts that don't know yet what's to come, including the parts that we may not love about ourselves. It's loving all the parts of us, knowing that there's a value and a purpose to all the parts of us. And I think that is true in our peace, and that may also be the purpose of life, right? Is to really get to that place where we genuinely love and accept all the parts of us, which then mirrors into all the parts of everybody else, whether it's the person that drives their car into us, and or anything else in life. So one last question here. I want you to take us to the moment 18 months after the accident when you got in that car and you drove yourself to work. What was that like?
Oh, I still remember it very clearly. There was so much. First of all, I was scared. I and I think it was the fear of, I can't believe I'm doing this. Am I crazy? I'm getting in a car by myself and I'm driving. Like, the doctors have done a great job with my eyesight and I've relearned to use my hands again, but should I be putting all these other people on the road at risk right now? But it was so exhilarating. A sense of freedom and independence that I had never known, or if I had, I'd always taken it for granted. And all of a sudden, I wasn't taking it for granted anymore. So to do that, and then I had at the time, I lived way out west in Avondale, Arizona, and I was going to police headquarters, which is downtown Phoenix. So I had to drive down Interstate 10, and it's a good 30, 35 minutes drive. And I'll never forget pulling into that parking lot and putting my truck in park and just sitting there for a minute. And I was like, you did it. You're here. And here's where you wanted to be. Everything that you've worked for 18 months, this is where you wanted to be. And now I'm here. And man, it made me do something with it. And I've never stopped taking that for granted. Every time I can drive somewhere, every time I go get on an airplane and travel by myself, I never take for granted how amazing it is to be free and to be independent. And I allow myself to be just showered with exhilaration because I want those good feelings. I want them as many. They don't come often. So when they do, you better, you better, you better let the feels feel.
Right, milk it for all we got. It's
like, come on in. I'm what if you want to make me feel good, come here. I'm gonna hold on to you for as many hours as I can until something shakes up my day, and you guys go away for a little while, and then I gotta wait for you to come back. That's just truly how simplistic and almost comical. I'm glad you're smiling because that's it is funny, which is important. You got to smile and you got to laugh, but that's how simple and in some ways easy life is to understand. Look, you woke up this morning and we all had a schedule for today. We all have a plan for today. And guaranteed every single one of us, when we lay our head down on the pillow tonight and we reflect on the day, every one of us is going to go, well, that didn't go exactly like I thought it was going to. It never does. There's going to be good parts. There's going to be great parts. Then there's going to be a few of the boring, mundane. Yeah, that's what I had planned. But I'm telling you, the ups and downs. I love when people say, I was at a crossroads of life once. I'm at a crossroads of life 20 times every day, literally every day. If I take this path, I don't get to know what's down the other path. And I can't choose both. I got to choose one of them. And it's 20 times a day. I got to make a decision of what I'm going to do. That's a crossroads that could be life changing, life altering. Sometimes you won't know it, right? Sometimes you won't know it at all. But sometimes you do get to see, okay, I made the right choice. And if you didn't make the right choice, just know how to turn around and find your way back.
right. And to give yourself grace and compassion because you did the best that you could in that moment.
Yes, give yourself grace. Very important.
Well, I'm just loving you with all my heart.
You're so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're so easy to talk to. I love, thank you. It was a great conversation.
So are you. And I've heard from people who've heard you speak that you're an incredible speaker. Isabella, one of my team members that highly recommended you, and several others. And so how can people learn about having you come to their organization or association or wherever to speak and teach people what is important for them to remember?
Well, I'm the only one who answers all my stuff, and I made it really simple. I have a website called burningshield.com. There's a book available on Amazon titled Burning Shield. And if you figure out how to spell my crazy last name, I'm very active on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You got to be careful on Instagram to make sure a lot of people wanted to create fake accounts and be jerks, but I have a blue check mark. I'm certified, so make sure you find the right one. But I'm so easy to get a hold of, and yeah, you can inquire. I do a keynote, Burning Shield, which is my story, overcoming adversity. I have workshops on grit and resilience, and I also teach public speaking. I love public speaking. I mean, I can't even tell you how much I love it. I know it's people's kind of their number one fear. And I think public speaking, it doesn't matter if you're talking to one person or if you're talking to 800. It's something you need to know how to do. And I love doing it. So I have those four things. And again, if you want to inquire about it, I'm so easy to get a hold of.
And I thank you again, Jason, really from all my heart. You are such a delight to get to know. And I wish you and your family all the best in the world. Many, many more exhilarating, joyful, peaceful, graceful moments.
Thank you, Fred. You are You are full of peace and serenity, and it's a beautiful thing in this world. So I thank you so much. You made my day just having this conversation. I appreciate it.